This is the Unit 6B Study Guide answer key. And we're going to start by looking at this first one. So you can either solve with the 5D process, or you can solve by writing and solving an equation. And in this case, I chose to write and solve an equation. And here's our problem. The perimeter of a triangle is 44 inches. The length of one side is twice the length of the shortest side, and the length of the other side is 12 inches longer than the length of the shortest side. What are the lengths of all three sides? So, I started by drawing the triangle. I didn't get any information about the shortest side, so I made my shortest side S because that's all I know about it. It is S units long. Then I found out that one of the other sides is twice what the shortest side is. So again, I don't know what S is, I don't know what the shortest side is, so I do 2 times my shortest side, or 2 times S. Then the last one was 12 inches longer than my shortest side, and I labeled that side S plus 12. So I have all 3 of my sides here. And then over here, I started to write my equation for solving for the perimeter. So in order to find the perimeter of a triangle, I have to add up all the sides. So one of my sides was S, one of them was S plus 12, and one of them was 2S. So I have all 3 of my sides there, and the total is supposed to be 44 inches. So they were supposed to be equal to 44. Now what I can do is I can combine all of my S's together. I have S plus 2S, so altogether that is 4S, and then I'm adding 12, and that equals 44. Then, in order to undo this adding 12 and to get my S's alone on one side, I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. That positive 12 and then taking away 12 make 0, so I'm left with 4S on the left side. And then once I take away 12 from 44, I have 32. And then my goal is to figure out what can I multiply by 4 to get 32. Well, if I am thinking about all my math facts, I know that 4 times 8 is 32, but I could also do that by dividing both sides by 4. 4S divided by 4 would be 1S, and then 32 divided by 4 is 8. So once you get to that point, you can think about it either way. So that's the first one. Number 2 says consider the equation mat below, and we have all sorts of tiles on this equation mat. But the first part says write the expressions for the mats above. So finding an expression for mat A, finding an expression for mat B. This is before you do any simplifications at all. So for mat A, what I saw on it was for positive x's, 3 negative x's, 2 positive 1's, and 1 negative 1. And then for B, I saw 2x, 1 negative x, 5 positive 1's, and 4 negative 1's. So when I simplify, even just by making 0 pairs, I'm left with x plus 1 on mat A and x plus 1 on mat B. I'll show you how I got that. I have a 0 pair there, 0 pair. I have 4. There are my 0 pairs on that side. All 4 of those together make a 0 pair. And those 2. So I'm left with x plus 1 and x plus 1. However, I could then remove x plus 1 from each side. But if you ever get to the point where you see that you're left with the same thing on both sides by just making zero pairs, you can know that they are equal. They are equivalent because then I could remove the same thing from both sides and I'm left with 0 and 0. And 0 does equal 0. X plus 1 does equal x plus 1. So either way you simplify, you're going to get that they're equal. And when it says if x equals 5, which mat would be greater? So I'm just going to say, I know that they're going to be equal, but I can prove it. If I have that x is 5, I can say that 5 plus 1, and I would get 6 on mat A. Same thing for mat B. 5 plus 1 equals 6. So no matter what we have for x, in this case, we're going to get that they're equal. That might not always be the case, though, so it's important to know that you would need to plug in that value of x to then figure out which one is greater. All right, and then number 3, it says write the situation as an inequality and graph it on a number line. In order to enroll in the Kids on Campus program at the local community college, the students must be, and this is where we had a little bit of disagreement in some of the classes yesterday. It says it must be at less than 7 years old, which doesn't make sense. So I read it as must be less than 7 years old, and in that case, it would be this answer, x is less than 7, and when I graph it, I have an open dot because it is not less than or equal to, it is only less than, and it's pointing to the numbers that are less than 7. And now some people argued that they read it as at least 7 years old, and that would be okay too. I can agree with that. And then that would be x is greater than or equal to 7. And then when I graph it, I have my shaded or my filled in dot on the 7. And it's all pointing to the numbers that are bigger than 7. So whichever way you would have done that, however you read that one, I promise it will be much more clear on the test. All right, my diamond problems. For this first one, this is the easiest one because it gave us the factors and our add-in. So I have negative 8 times negative 6, and that gets us positive 48, so that one goes there. Then I have negative 8 plus negative 6, and I get negative 14. So that one goes there. And then this one, I get negative 96 divided by 12, and I get negative 8. So negative 8 is my other factor, so then I do 12 plus negative 8, and I get positive 4. And this one, I have the sum, and I have one of the numbers that I'm adding. So I did the sum, which was 5/10, and I subtract 3/10, and I get 2/10. And then to do this one, and I actually prefer to multiply with fractions, so I turned these into fractions, and I did 2/10 times 3/10, and I get 6/100, which is the same as 0.06. So being really careful when I'm thinking about my decimals to know that I am putting the decimal in the correct place. And the last one, this was the trickiest one because they gave you the sum and the product, but they didn't give you any of the numbers that you're using. So what I started with is what numbers multiply to make 20. So I said 1 times 20, and I knew that one of them has to be negative because my product is negative. So 1 is positive, 1 is negative, and I have 1 times 20, but when I do any combination of negative 1 and positive 20 or negative 20, positive 1, they don't add together to make negative 1. So I know that that doesn't work because if I did negative 1 plus positive 20, I'd get positive 19. If I do 1 plus negative 20, I'm going to get negative 19. Neither one of those is negative 1, so those do not work. And then I tried 2 times 10. And 2 times 10, if I do positive 2 times, or I'm sorry, plus negative 10, I get negative 8. And if I do negative 2 plus positive 10, I get positive 8. So neither one of those makes negative 1. And then I have 4 times 5 also multiplies to make 20. And if I do negative 4 plus positive 5, I get positive 1, which is not negative 1, so it had to be positive 4 and negative 5. I knew that my bigger number, when I filled this in, I knew the bigger number had to be negative because my sum was negative. So just little tips and tricks to help you kind of figure out what those ones should be on your test. All right, and then we have our combining like terms. So this is the first one for part A. It said to simplify as much as we can. So I have 5x plus 8 groups of 2 negative x's and 5 positive 1's. It is really important that you distribute or you multiply first, because if you don't, you're going to get the correct or the incorrect answer when you simplify. So 8 times negative 2x is negative 16x. 8 times 5 is 40. So once I have multiplied by 8, that 8 goes away and I don't use it anymore. I'm not going to be adding on 8 positives. So it's really important that you're very careful with this problem. So I have 5 positive x's. I'm putting that in my x table over here. And then I have 16 negative x's and 40 positive 1's. So the only thing I'm combining is my 2 x's. So I have positive 5, negative 16, and I get negative 11x plus 40. I can't do anything from there. Part B says negative 10a plus 5b plus 9b plus negative 8a. So I make my table. I have a's and b's. I was very careful to put the sign in front of my term. So the 10a had to be negative. The negative 8a has my negative there. If I don't put it there, I get the wrong answer. So be careful about that. So negative 10a and negative 8a together make negative 18a, and positive 5b and positive 9b together make positive 14b. I can't combine those because they're a's and b's, so I have negative 18a plus 14b. All right, and then number 6. Consider the equation mat to the right. Write the original equation represented. So making sure you're actually starting by doing that. So before I did any sort of simplifying, I just wrote what tiles I saw. So I had 2 positive x's, 1 negative x, 3 positive 1's, 1 negative 1. And then I had 2 positive x's on map B, 3 positive 1's, 2 negative 1's. When I make my 0 pairs, when I start to simplify, I'm left with, after 0 pairs, I had x plus 2 on map A, 2x plus 1 on map B. When I simplified by removing my balanced sets, I got 1 left on map A and x left on map B, so x equals 1. Then it says to check your solution, and this is a really important thing to do to make sure you have gotten the correct answer. So what I did was I took my original for mat A, that was 2x minus x plus 3 minus 1, and anytime I had x, I replaced that with a 1. So instead of 2 times x, I had 2 times 1, minus 1 plus 3 minus 1, and when I simplify using order of operations, going from left to right, I get 3 for mat A, and I then do the same thing for mat B. I replace my x with the 1. 2 times 1 plus 3 minus 2. When I do all of my simplifications, I'm using order of operations and I'm going from left to right, I get positive 3. And 3 equals 3, so I know that my solution is correct. And the last one, it says, write a rule for the proportional relationship in the table below. My table is hours and miles. This would be my X, this is my Y. When I am doing my rule, I have to find the unit rate, and my unit rate is going to be Y over X. If you do X over Y, you're going to get a different number, and it's not going to be correct. So what I did, and I double checked to make sure all of these were the same, I did 100 divided by 2, Y divided by X, and I got 50. Same thing for the second data point. I had 250 divided by 5, which is 50. Third one is 500 divided by 10, which is 50. So I know that my unit rate is 50. Then I wrote my rule. Y equals, and it's going to be whatever your unit rate is multiplied by X. Never put any other numbers in for Y or X for this one. Your rule should have both variables in it. Y equals your unit rate times X, so we have Y equals 50 times X. And you can double check if you do our X value, 2, is 2 times 50, 100. You can check all of those data points, and you should be getting the correct numbers.